When a single father found the CEO crying alone at midnight, he made one choice that would shake an entire corporation, but it started with something as simple as a shirt. If you've ever wondered whether one small act of kindness can change everything, stay with me until the end of this story. It will surprise you, move you, and maybe even change how you see the people around you. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime that echoed too loudly in the marble-lined hallway of the executive floor. Liam Carter stepped out, balancing a stack of delivery boxes against his chest, his worn sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor. He'd made this trip 100 times before. Drop off the packages, get a signature, leave. Simple, routine, forgettable. But the moment he turned the corner toward the CEO's office suite, his feet stopped moving. The boxes nearly slipped from his grip. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls, he could see her, Ava Sinclair, the 30-year-old CEO, whose face graced the covers of business magazines, whose presence commanded silence in boardrooms, whose very name carried weight that most people twice her age could only dream of possessing. She was sitting at her desk, framed by the morning sun streaming through the windows behind her, her dark hair pulled back in that signature sleek ponytail that never seemed to have a strand out of place. But it wasn't her posture that made Liam freeze. It wasn't the way her fingers moved across her keyboard with mechanical precision. It was what she was wearing, his shirt. Not a similar shirt, not the same brand or style. His shirt, the navy blue button-down he'd pulled from his closet yesterday morning, the one with the slightly frayed collar that he'd been meaning to replace for months. The one with that tiny coffee stain near the third button that never quite came out no matter how many times he scrubbed it. The one he'd been wearing last night. Liam's breath caught somewhere between his lungs and his throat. His mind scrambled, grasping for logic, for explanation, for anything that made sense. He looked down at himself, at the plain gray t-shirt he'd thrown on this morning, at the jeans that had seen better days, at the hands that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. The boxes shifted in his arms. One slipped. He caught it clumsily, the sound making Ava's eyes lift from her screen. Their gazes met through the glass. For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flickered across her face. Recognition. Memory. Something that looked almost like vulnerability before her expression smoothed back into that practiced professional mask he'd seen 1,000 times from a distance. She stood, moving with that measured grace that seemed to define everything about her, and walked to her office door. She opened it herself. She never opened it herself. There were assistants for that, and gestured him inside. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice carrying that crisp authority that made junior executives straighten their spines. "Come in." Liam's legs moved on autopilot, carrying him through the doorway into an office that smelled faintly of lavender and paper and something expensive he couldn't quite identify. The door clicked shut behind him, and suddenly the world felt very small and very large at the same time. He set the boxes down on the side table, carefully, precisely, buying himself seconds to think. "You can leave those there," Ava said, moving back behind her desk. She didn't sit. Instead, she stood there, her fingers resting lightly on the polished surface, and looked at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall he'd ever built. Liam swallowed. His mouth had gone dry. "Ms. Sinclair, He stopped, started again. "Why are you wearing my shirt?" The question came out rougher than he'd intended, edges of confusion and disbelief scraping against each syllable. It sounded almost accusatory, which wasn't what he meant, but his brain was still trying to catch up with reality. Ava's eyebrow lifted slightly, the smallest movement that somehow conveyed entire paragraphs of meaning. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. "You don't remember last night?" she asked quietly. The words hit him like cold water. Last night. Fragments started surfacing through the fog of exhaustion that had defined his past week. He'd stayed late, again, finishing the quarterly logistics report that his supervisor had dumped on his desk with a 3-day deadline. His daughter Emma was at his sister's house, safe and probably already asleep by the time he'd finally closed his laptop around 11. He remembered the rain. God, the rain had been torrential, hammering against the windows like it had a personal vendetta against the glass. He remembered stretching, his back cracking from too many hours hunched over spreadsheets. Remembered thinking he should just go home, should call it a night, should stop pushing himself so hard. But then he'd heard something. A sound that didn't belong in the empty corporate silence of the late-night office. Someone crying. Liam's voice trailed off as the memories started clicking into place, pieces of a puzzle he hadn't realized he'd been solving. I heard you, in the conference room. Ava's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened imperceptibly. She moved around the desk, each step deliberate, until she was standing just a few feet away from him. Close enough that he could see the faint shadows under her eyes that her makeup almost, but not quite, concealed. You knocked, she said. It wasn't a question. I did. And I let you in. You did. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. Outside the office windows, the city sprawled beneath them, thousands of people starting their ordinary days, drinking their coffee, checking their phones, completely unaware that 30 floors above them, something extraordinary was unfolding in the space between a CEO and a delivery clerk. Liam's hands found his pockets because he didn't know what else to do with them. Miss Sinclair, I apologize if I overstepped any boundaries last night. I didn't mean to. You gave me your shirt, Ava interrupted, her voice cutting through his fumbling apology with the precision of a scalpel. When I spilled coffee on myself, you took off your own shirt and gave it to me without hesitation. The memory surfaced fully now, crystalline and vivid. The conference room bathed in the blue-gray light of the storm. Ava sitting in one of those expensive ergonomic chairs, her expensive blouse ruined by coffee, her expensive composure shattered by something he still didn't fully understand. And him, acting on instinct rather than thought, shrugging out of his button-down and offering it to her like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was just a shirt, he said quietly. No. Ava's voice carried a weight that made him look up, made him meet her gaze directly. It wasn't. She moved to the window, her silhouette framed against the morning light, and for a moment she looked like one of those paintings in museums that Emma dragged him to on free weekends. Beautiful and untouchable, and somehow infinitely sad. Do you know what it's like, Ava asked, her voice softer now, almost conversational, to have everything and nothing at the same time? Liam didn't answer. The question felt rhetorical, felt like the beginning of something he wasn't sure he was ready to hear. I built this company from nothing, she continued, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the glass. I was 23 when I started. Everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced, too female to succeed in this industry. I proved them all wrong, every single one of them. She turned back to face him, and in the morning light she looked simultaneously older and younger than her 30 years. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to have someone see me as anything other than a title, a position, an asset to be leveraged or an obstacle to be overcome. Her hand moved to the collar of his shirt, her shirt now, and adjusted it slightly. Last night you saw me as a person, just a person who needed help. Liam felt something shift in his chest, some wall he hadn't known was there beginning to crack. Everyone's just a person, he said simply. Titles don't change that. Ava's laugh was soft, almost bitter. You'd be surprised how many people forget that. She walked back to her desk, her fingers drumming once against the polished wood. How is your daughter? The question caught him off guard. Emma. Wait, how do you know about Emma? You talked about her last night, for almost an hour. A ghost of a smile touched Ava's lips. You told me about her obsession with dinosaurs, about how she insists on wearing mismatched socks because matching is boring, about how she asks you questions that you don't know how to answer, but you try anyway. Liam blinked. He had no memory of this. Well, that wasn't quite true. He had vague impressions, like remembering a dream, but nothing concrete. The exhaustion must have hit him harder than he'd thought. I talk about her too much, he said, a reflexive apology. You talk about her like she's the center of your universe, Ava corrected. It's refreshing, honest. She sat down in her chair, the movement graceful and controlled, back to being the CEO that boardrooms feared and shareholders respected. Do you know why I stayed late last night, Mr. Carter? He shook his head. Because I'd just come from my father's funeral. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. Liam felt his stomach drop. "Ms. Sinclair, I'm so sorry. I didn't. No one knew," she said simply. "I didn't tell anyone. Private family matter, private ceremony. I was back at the office by 6 p.m. because that's what was expected. That's what I've always done. Compartmentalize, separate, keep moving forward." She looked down at her hands, at the expensive rings that probably cost more than Liam made in 6 months. But then the rain started and something in me just broke. All the words I didn't say at his funeral, all the grief I'd been holding in, it just came pouring out in that conference room. I thought I was alone. Her eyes met his again. "And then you knocked." Liam remembered that knock, remembered his hand hovering over the door, remembered the voice in his head telling him to walk away, to mind his business, to not get involved in things above his pay grade. Remembered knocking anyway. "I'm glad I did," he said quietly. "So am I." Ava stood again, moving toward him with purpose. She extended her hand, formal, businesslike, but there was something in her eyes that transcended the gesture. "Thank you, Liam, for last night, for the shirt, for treating me like a human being when I desperately needed it." He took her hand. Her grip was firm, confident, but he could feel the slight tremor in her fingers that betrayed the emotion beneath the professional veneer. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Anyone would have—" "No," Ava interrupted, her grip tightening slightly. "They wouldn't have. Most people in this building would have walked right past. Or worse, they would have helped because they saw an opportunity. You helped because it was the right thing to do. There's a difference." She released his hand and moved back behind her desk, but something in the air had shifted. The distance between CEO and delivery clerk felt both smaller and more significant than it had 15 minutes ago. "I'll get your shirt cleaned and returned to you," she said, her voice returning to that crisp, professional tone. "Keep it," Liam heard himself say. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. "It looks better on you anyway." Ava's smile was genuine this time, reaching her eyes. "Are you sure?" "It's just a shirt," he repeated, but they both knew it wasn't. "Not anymore." The intercom on her desk buzzed. Her assistant's voice crackled through. "Miss Sinclair, the 9 o'clock with the board is ready to begin." Ava pressed the button. "I'll be there in 2 minutes." She looked back at Liam. "Duty calls." He nodded, picking up his empty delivery manifest. "Of course. I should get back to work anyway." But as he turned toward the door, her voice stopped him. "Liam?" He looked back. "Would you have dinner with me sometime, just as a thank you?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications he wasn't sure he understood. A CEO asking a delivery clerk to dinner. It was the kind of thing that spawned office rumors, that created complications, that blurred lines that probably shouldn't be blurred. But when he looked at her, he didn't see a CEO. He saw the woman from last night, raw, vulnerable, human. "I'd like that," he said. Her smile was soft, almost shy. "Good. I'll have my assistant reach out." Liam left the office in a daze, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that felt like punctuation on something he couldn't quite name. He made it to the elevator, pressed the button, waited as the doors opened and swallowed him into the descent back to his ordinary world. But as the numbers counted downward, floor by floor, he realized something had fundamentally shifted. He'd walked into that office as invisible as he'd always been, another faceless employee in a corporation of thousands. He was walking out as someone who'd been seen, and somehow that changed everything. The rest of the day passed in a blur of deliveries and paperwork and the mundane rhythm of his job, but Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was moving through a world that had subtly altered while he wasn't looking. His coworkers looked the same, the hallways smelled the same, the fluorescent lights hummed with the same persistent buzz. But underneath it all, something had shifted. By the time his shift ended and he picked up Emma from his sister's house, the conversation with Ava felt almost dreamlike, like something his exhausted brain had conjured from too many late nights and not enough sleep. But when he got home and opened his closet, the empty hanger where his navy button-down used to hang told him it had been real, all of it. Emma was chattering about her day, about the frog she'd found in Aunt Sarah's garden, about how her teacher had let them watch a documentary about velociraptors, and Liam listened with the part of his brain that was always listening to his daughter. But another part, a part that had been dormant for longer than he cared to admit, was replaying the morning. The way Ava had looked wearing his shirt, the vulnerability in her voice when she talked about her father, the weight of her hand in his. "Daddy, you're not listening," Emma accused, her 8-year-old face scrunched up in that expression of exaggerated offense that never failed to make him smile. "I am listening," he protested, pulling her into a hug that she squirmed against but didn't really try to escape. "Velociraptors. Very important." "You're thinking about something else," she said with the uncanny perceptiveness of children. "You have your thinking face on." "Maybe I'm thinking about velociraptors." "You don't care about velociraptors." She pulled back and looked at him with eyes that were too knowing for 8 years old. "You're thinking about a girl." Liam nearly choked. "What? No, why would you?" "Aunt Sarah says when grown-ups get that look, they're thinking about someone special." Emma grinned, gap-toothed and mischievous. "Do you have a girlfriend, Daddy?" "No," he said firmly, because it was true. What he had was a confusing encounter with his CEO that he didn't know how to categorize. "I'm just tired, Pumpkin. It was a long day." Emma seemed to accept this, launching into another story about her friend Madison's pet hamster, and Liam let himself be pulled back into the comfortable rhythm of their evening routine. Dinner, spaghetti with the sauce that came from a jar because he still hadn't mastered his mother's recipe. Homework, math problems that he had to Google because third-grade curriculum had apparently gotten harder since he was in school. Bath time, story time, the nightly negotiation over bedtime that Emma always lost but never stopped fighting. By the time he collapsed onto his own bed, the day had taken on that surreal quality again. Had it really happened? Had Ava Sinclair really been wearing his shirt? Had she really asked him to dinner? His phone buzzed on the nightstand, an email notification from ava.sinclair@sinclaircorp.com to liam.carter@sinclaircorp.com. Subject: Thank you. Liam, I wanted to reach out personally rather than having my assistant contact you, as I'd mentioned earlier. I realized after you left that I never properly explained what last night meant to me. In this position, I'm surrounded by people constantly, but I'm rarely less alone. Everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. Everyone sees me as a means to an end, whether that end is a promotion, a favor, or simply access to power. You saw me as a person in pain and responded with simple human kindness. You didn't ask for my story. You didn't pry into corporate secrets. You didn't try to leverage the moment into opportunity. You just helped. That's rarer than you might think. So thank you. For the shirt, yes, but more for the reminder that compassion still exists in this world. As for dinner, I meant what I said. No business talk, no corporate agendas, just two people sharing a meal. If you're interested, there's a small Italian place in the Riverside district that no one knows I frequent. Next Friday at 7? Let me know. Ava Liam read the email 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of meaning in the carefully chosen words. The formality that couldn't quite hide the warmth underneath, the vulnerability threaded through professional language, the careful distinction she'd drawn, just two people sharing a meal. He should say no. He knew he should say no. There were power dynamics at play, corporate hierarchies that existed for good reasons, boundaries that protected both of them from complications neither needed. But he thought about the woman crying in the conference room, thought about the way her composure had cracked to reveal the raw humanity underneath, thought about his own life, the years of putting Emma first, of letting his own needs fade into background noise, of existing in a holding pattern that felt safe but incomplete. He hit reply before he could talk himself out of it. Ava, I'd like that very much. Friday at 7 works perfectly. Just send me the address. And you don't need to thank me. We all need someone to see us sometimes. Liam, he hit send and immediately wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake or the best decision he'd made in years. Probably both. The week that followed was a study in contradictions. On the surface, nothing changed. Liam still arrived at work at 7 a.m., still made his deliveries, still navigated the maze of corporate bureaucracy that defined his days. Emma still needed help with homework, still insisted on wearing her dinosaur shirt 3 days in a row, still asked impossible questions about the universe that sent him scrambling to Google. But underneath the routine, everything felt different. He found himself looking up whenever he made deliveries to the executive floor, though he never saw Ava. He caught glimpses of her in meetings through glass walls, always composed, always in control, and wondered if he'd imagined the vulnerability he'd witnessed. His coworker Marcus noticed something was off. "You've been weird all week," Marcus said Thursday afternoon as they loaded boxes into the service elevator. "You meet someone?" "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" Liam muttered. "Because you've got that look. Like you're here but not here, you know?" Marcus grinned. "Plus, you've been checking your phone every 5 minutes. Dead giveaway, man." Liam hadn't even realized he was doing it. But Marcus was right. Every notification made his pulse jump. Every email made him check the sender, hoping for another message from an address that ended in at sinclaircorp.com. There hadn't been another email, but that was fine. They'd made plans. Friday at 7, that was enough. Friday arrived with agonizing slowness and terrifying speed at the same time. Liam dropped Emma at his sister's house with strict instructions that Sarah was not to interrogate him about his evening plans. Sarah's knowing smile suggested she planned to ignore those instructions completely. The Italian restaurant was tucked into a quiet street that tourists never found, the kind of place that had been run by the same family for 3 generations and didn't bother with Yelp or Instagram. Liam arrived exactly at 7, his palms slightly sweaty, his heart beating just a little too fast. Ava was already there, sitting at a corner table in jeans and a simple black sweater that made her look like a completely different person from the CEO in tailored suits. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves around her shoulders, and she was reading something on her phone with an expression of deep concentration. She looked up as he approached, and her smile was genuine and warm, and just nervous enough to make him feel less alone in his own anxiety. "You came," she said, standing to greet him. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might reconsider. Decide that having dinner with your CEO was a complication you didn't need." She gestured to the seat across from her. "I'm glad you didn't." They sat, and for a moment the silence was awkward, 2 people from different worlds trying to find common ground. But then the waiter arrived with menus and wine recommendations, and the simple ritual of ordering food broke the tension. "So," Ava said once they were alone again, "tell me something about yourself that has nothing to do with work." Liam laughed. "That's most of my life, to be honest. Work is just what I do to pay for the important stuff." "Which is?" "Emma, mostly. She's the center of everything." He pulled out his phone, couldn't help himself, showed Ava his lock screen, a photo of Emma, grinning gap-toothed at the camera, holding a toy dinosaur. "She's 8. Smart as hell, stubborn as a mule, obsessed with prehistoric reptiles. She's my whole world." Ava studied the photo with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Her mother?" "Left when Emma was 2. Decided motherhood wasn't what she'd signed up for." The old bitterness had faded over the years, leaving only stating facts. "It's been just the 2 of us since then." "That must be hard." "It is," he admitted. "But it's also the best thing that ever happened to me. Emma makes me better, makes me want to be better." He took a sip of wine. "What about you? Any secret dinosaur-obsessed children I should know about?" Ava's laugh was soft, a little sad. "No. No children. No time for relationships that might lead to children. I've been married to my company for the past 7 years." She traced the rim of her glass with one finger. "My father used to say I'd inherited his drive, but not his wisdom about balance. He was right." "The funeral," Liam said quietly. How are you handling it?" "Honestly, I don't know." She looked down at her hands. "We had a complicated relationship. He built the foundation of the company, and I took it to heights he never imagined. He was proud, but he was also critical, always pushing, always demanding more. When he died, I didn't know if I was supposed to grieve the father I had or the father I wished I'd had." The waiter arrived with their appetizers, giving Liam time to process her words. When they were alone again, he spoke carefully. "Maybe you grieve both, the reality and the possibility." Ava's eyes met his, and there was something in them, gratitude, recognition, connection. "That's exactly what my therapist said. They talked through dinner, the conversation flowing easier as wine and food and time worked their quiet magic. Ava told him about growing up in her father's shadow, about the pressure of being a woman in tech, about the loneliness of success. Liam told her about single parenthood, about juggling spreadsheets and school plays, about the quiet terror of being solely responsible for another human's well-being. And somewhere between the pasta and dessert, something remarkable happened. The distance collapsed. CEO and delivery clerk. Those titles became irrelevant, fading into background noise as two people found unexpected common ground in the messy, complicated business of being human. I should confess something, Ava said as they lingered over coffee. I've been watching you for months. Liam nearly choked. What? Not in a creepy way, she added quickly, a flush coloring her cheeks. But you were always different, kind to everyone, from the janitors to the executives. You'd hold doors, remember names, ask people how they were doing, and actually listen to the answers. In a building full of people climbing over each other to get ahead, you were just decent. I don't know how to respond to that, Liam admitted. You don't have to respond. I just wanted you to know that Monday morning, when you found me wearing your shirt, that wasn't the first time I'd noticed you. It was just the first time I had a reason to talk to you. She smiled. And I'm glad I did. The evening wound down with the gentle inevitability of all good things ending. They split the check despite Ava's protests, stepped out into the cool night air, and stood on the sidewalk in that awkward space where goodbyes happen. Thank you, Ava said, for coming, for talking, for being exactly who you are. Thank you for inviting me, Liam replied, for trusting me with your story. They stood there for another moment, and Liam felt the pull. The temptation to make this something more than dinner to close the distance between them, to see if the connection he felt was mutual. But then he thought about Emma, about complications, about the very real power dynamics that didn't disappear just because they'd shared a meal. Good night, Ava, he said, taking a deliberate step back. Her smile was understanding. Good night, Liam. He walked to his car feeling lighter than he had in years, the evening replaying in his mind like a favorite song. He didn't know what this was, didn't know what it might become, but for the first time since his ex-wife had walked out, he felt like maybe, just maybe, there was room in his life for something more than responsibility and routine. His phone buzzed as he started the engine, a text from an unknown number that he somehow knew was hers. Thank you for seeing me. All of me. He saved the number, typed back, thank you for letting me. L. And as he drove home through streets lit by street lamps and storefront signs, Liam Carter, 32-year-old single father, delivery clerk, ordinary man in an ordinary life, allowed himself to believe that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest ripples, that sometimes kindness finds kindness, that sometimes a borrowed shirt is the beginning of something extraordinary. The weeks that followed their dinner settled into a rhythm that felt both natural and impossibly fragile. Text messages arrived at odd hours, Ava sending photos of terrible coffee with captions like, "This is what $7 buys you in the financial district." Liam responding with pictures of Emma's latest dinosaur drawings, crayon masterpieces that Ava saved to her phone like they were gallery-worthy art. They didn't see each other often. Their worlds, despite occupying the same building, existed on different planes. Liam navigated the service corridors and loading docks, the unsexy infrastructure that kept the corporation running. Ava commanded boardrooms and strategy sessions, her calendar a Tetris game of impossible commitments that left no room for spontaneity. But somehow, in the margins of their separate lives, they found each other. A passing conversation in the elevator when Liam made an executive floor delivery and Ava happened to be stepping out for a meeting. 5 minutes stolen in the lobby when she was coming back from lunch and he was heading out for his break. Moments that shouldn't have mattered, but somehow did, accumulating like interest in an account neither of them knew they'd opened. Marcus noticed, of course. Marcus noticed everything. "You're glowing," he said one afternoon, watching Liam check his phone for the third time in 10 minutes. "It's weird. I don't like it." "I'm not glowing," Liam protested, shoving his phone back in his pocket. "You are absolutely glowing. You look like someone who just discovered sunshine exists." Marcus grinned. "So when do I get to meet her?" "There's no her to meet." "Right. And I'm the Queen of England. Marcus leaned against the loading dock wall, arms crossed. Look, I'm happy for you, man. You deserve something good. Just be careful, yeah? Careful of what? Marcus hesitated, choosing his words with uncharacteristic caution. You're a good guy, Liam, one of the best. But you've got a kid to think about, and getting involved with someone who's... He stopped himself. Just don't lose sight of what matters. Liam wanted to argue, wanted to insist that Marcus had it wrong, that whatever was happening with Ava wasn't serious enough to warrant warnings or concern. But the truth was more complicated than he wanted to admit. What had started as gratitude and curiosity had evolved into something that kept him awake at night, staring at his ceiling and wondering what she was doing, if she was thinking about him, if this strange connection they'd stumbled into meant the same thing to her that it was starting to mean to him. He thought about Emma, about the carefully constructed life he'd built for them, about the stability she deserved. Getting involved with Ava, really involved, meant introducing complications he'd spent 6 years avoiding. It meant questions he didn't know how to answer and risks he wasn't sure he was ready to take. But then his phone would buzz with another message, another glimpse into her world, and all his careful reasoning would dissolve like sugar in hot coffee. Board meeting ran 4 hours past schedule. I'm starting to understand why people fake heart attacks to escape these things. He smiled, typed back. Pretty sure faking medical emergencies is frowned upon in the corporate handbook. So is falling asleep during presentations, but Jenkins managed it anyway. What are you up to? Picking up Emma. She's got a science project due tomorrow that she just remembered existed. Of course she did. What's the project? Volcano. Classic. Need help? The offer surprised him. He stared at the message, reading implications into 3 simple words. I have a million things to do tonight. I could help with a 3rd grader's science project instead. I want to be part of your world, even the mundane parts. Or maybe he was reading too much into it. Maybe she was just being nice. You've probably got better things to do than mess with baking soda and vinegar, he wrote back. Probably. But none of them sound as interesting. Send me your address? And that was how Ava Sinclair, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, ended up in Liam's modest apartment at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget, helping his 8-year-old daughter build a papier-mâché volcano. Emma had been suspicious at first, eyeing Ava with the territorial wariness of a child who'd grown used to having her father's undivided attention. But Ava had won her over within 15 minutes by knowing the scientific name for the Tyrannosaurus rex's larger cousin and suggesting they paint the volcano to look like it was from the Cretaceous period. Most people just do red and orange, Emma said, carefully applying green paint to the base of their creation. But you're right. If we're being scientifically accurate, we should account for the surrounding ecosystem. Exactly, Ava agreed, her eyes meeting Liam's over Emma's head. Her smile was soft, slightly bemused, as if she couldn't quite believe she was spending her evening covered in newspaper and craft paint. Liam leaned against the kitchen counter, watching them work, and felt something shift in his chest. This was dangerous territory. This was Emma getting attached. This was his carefully maintained boundaries crumbling like the newspaper they were tearing into strips. This was also the most content he'd felt in years. Dad, stop staring and come help, Emma commanded. Ms. Ava can't do all the work herself. Ms. Ava is doing just fine, Ava said, but she glanced up at him with eyes that invited him into their little circle, that made him feel like maybe this wasn't a mistake after all. He joined them on the floor, his knees protesting the hard surface, and let himself be pulled into the chaos of creation. Emma narrated her vision with the confidence of a museum curator. Ava offered suggestions with genuine interest, and Liam provided the manual labor, his larger hands better suited for the structural work. Somewhere between the papier-mâché and the paint, between Emma's running commentary on prehistoric volcanic activity and Ava's surprisingly detailed knowledge of geological epochs, the evening transformed into something that felt almost like family, almost like home. By the time the volcano was finished, a masterpiece of 3rd-grade engineering that leaned slightly to the left, but was undeniably impressive. Emma's eyelids were drooping despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Bedtime, kiddo, Liam said, ruffling her hair. But Ms. Ava just got here, Emma whined. Ms. Ava has probably been here too long already, Ava said gently. But I had a wonderful time. Your volcano is going to blow everyone else's out of the water. It's going to blow everyone else up with lava, Emma corrected seriously. Then, with the directness that only children can pull off, are you my dad's girlfriend? The question hung in the air like smoke. Liam felt his face heat, started to intervene, but Ava spoke first. I'm your dad's friend, she said carefully. Is that okay with you? Emma considered this with the gravity of a judge deliberating a verdict. I guess so. He doesn't have very many friends, just Uncle Marcus and Aunt Sarah. Then I'm honored to be added to such an exclusive list. Ava stood, her knees cracking in a way that made her wince and Emma giggle. Now you should listen to your dad and get some sleep. Science projects are exhausting work. Emma hugged her father goodnight, then, to both adults' surprise, hugged Ava too, quick and fierce before scampering off to her room with barely suppressed energy that belied her earlier exhaustion. Liam walked Ava to the door, the silence between them comfortable but charged with everything unsaid. They stood in the doorway, the hallway light casting long shadows, and for a moment neither of them moved. Thank you, Liam said finally, for coming, for helping. You didn't have to do any of that. I wanted to, Ava replied. She looked back toward the living room, where the volcano sat drying on newspapers spread across the coffee table. I can't remember the last time I did something just because it sounded fun. No agenda, no networking, no strategic value. Just making a mess and enjoying it. Welcome to my world. It's mostly mess. I like your world. Her voice was soft, almost vulnerable. It's real. Everything in my life is calculated and curated and performance. This was just life. Liam felt that pull again, stronger now, the temptation to close the distance between them, to kiss her in his doorway like a teenager at the end of a first date. But Emma was just down the hall, probably not as asleep as she should be, and this moment felt too fragile to rush. Same time next week? He asked instead. Emma's got a book report due. Ava's laugh was quiet and genuine. I don't think I'm qualified to help with literary analysis. Neither am I, but we'll figure it out together. She smiled, and in the dim hallway light, she looked younger than her 30 years. Happier. Good night, Liam. Good night, Ava. He watched her walk down the hallway to the elevator, watched until the doors closed and she disappeared, then went back inside to find Emma standing in the middle of the living room in her dinosaur pajamas, arms crossed. You like her, Emma announced. She's nice, Liam said carefully. You like her, I can tell. Emma tilted her head, studying him with eyes that saw too much. Do you think she likes you back? I don't know, baby. It's complicated. Grown-ups always say that when they mean yes, but don't want to admit it. Emma yawned, her certainty wavering with exhaustion. I think she likes you. She looked at you the way Princess Anna looks at Kristoff. Okay, bed. Now, before you start planning the wedding. Emma giggled, letting him shepherd her back to her room, but as he tucked her in, she grabbed his hand with sudden seriousness. Daddy, if you like her, it's okay. I won't be mad. His throat tightened. Thanks, Pumpkin. But right now, let's just focus on being friends. Okay? Okay. She snuggled into her pillow, already half asleep. But for the record, I like her too. She knows about dinosaurs. Liam kissed her forehead and retreated to his own room, but sleep was elusive. He lay in the dark, replaying the evening, seeing Ava's face as she'd painted with Emma, hearing her laugh, feeling the weight of possibilities he didn't know how to navigate. His phone buzzed. A message from her. Thank you for letting me into your home, into your life. Tonight was exactly what I needed. He stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. What he wanted to say was too much, too soon, too honest. So instead he wrote, You're welcome anytime. Emma's already planning your next visit. Just Emma? His heart stuttered. He took a breath, took a risk. Not just Emma. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, good. Because I'd like there to be a next visit, and one after that. And after that. That's a lot of visits. I'm counting on it. Sleep well, Liam. He set the phone down, smiled at his ceiling like an idiot, and allowed himself to believe that maybe Marcus was wrong. Maybe this didn't have to be dangerous. Maybe sometimes the risk was worth taking. The next few weeks proved him both right and wrong in equal measure. Right, because what he had with Ava continued to grow, deepening in those stolen moments and planned visits, becoming something that felt increasingly essential to his daily existence. Wrong, because with every step closer they took, the complications multiplied. The office started to notice. It began with glances, curious looks when Liam made his executive floor deliveries, whispers that stopped when he walked into break rooms. Nothing overt, nothing he could point to and call out, but the atmosphere had shifted. People were watching. "You're being careful, right?" Marcus asked one day, his voice low and concerned. "Because I'm hearing things." "What kind of things?" "The kind where people are wondering why the CEO's been seen having coffee in the commissary 3 times this week. The kind where someone in accounting swears she saw you two leaving together last Friday." Marcus looked genuinely worried. "I'm not judging, man, but this building is a fishbowl, and you're swimming with a very big fish. People talk." Liam knew Marcus was right. He'd been trying to ignore it, trying to pretend that the careful distance he and Ava maintained in public was enough to keep speculation at bay. But the truth was messier than discretion could contain. They'd been careful, always professional in the building, never touching beyond accidental brushes, keeping their conversations brief and business appropriate when others were around. But apparently careful wasn't enough. He texted Ava that evening. "We need to talk." Her response was immediate. "That's never good." "What's wrong?" "People are noticing. We should probably cool things off for a while." The 3 dots appeared and stayed there for a long time before her message came through, or we could stop hiding. His phone rang before he could respond. Her voice, when he answered, was steady but strained. "I know what you're thinking," Ava said without preamble, "that this is getting complicated, that people are talking, that maybe we should put distance between us before it becomes a problem." "Ava? And you're not wrong. People are absolutely talking. I've heard the whispers too. Some of my board members have even asked me pointed questions about my commitment to professional boundaries." She paused, and he could hear traffic in the background. Could picture her standing somewhere outside, phone pressed to her ear. "But I don't want to cool things off. I want the opposite." "The opposite could cost both of us," Liam said quietly. "You've got a company to run, a reputation to maintain. I've got Emma to think about. We can't just what? Just be honest about the fact that we care about each other? Just acknowledge that something real is happening between us?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I've spent my entire life doing what was expected, what was appropriate, what was strategically sound. I'm tired of it, Liam. I'm tired of pretending." "I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to think about the consequences." "I have thought about them. Every single day. Every time I have to act like you're just another employee, like seeing you doesn't make my entire day better, like I haven't memorized the sound of Emma talking about dinosaurs because you send me videos." She took a shaky breath. "I know it's complicated. I know there are power dynamics and corporate policies and 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I also know that I haven't felt this alive in years, and I don't want to give that up just because it's inconvenient." Liam closed his eyes, leaning against his kitchen counter. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop sneaking around. I'm suggesting we actually try this, whatever this is, for real. Not hidden, not secret, just us." "That's not how the world works, Ava. You know that. Then maybe it's time the world started working differently." There was steel in her voice now, that CEO decisiveness that moved mountains and changed industries. "I'm not saying we take out a billboard or make some grand announcement, but I'm also not going to keep treating you like you're invisible when you're the most visible thing in my life." The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Liam thought about Emma, about stability, about the careful life he'd built, thought about Marcus's warnings and office gossip and all the very real reasons to walk away, thought about Ava laughing over papier-mâché volcanoes, about text messages at midnight, about the way she looked at him like he was more than just a delivery clerk, like he mattered beyond his function. "Okay," he heard himself say. "Okay? Okay, we'll try. But Ava, if this starts affecting Emma, if it starts causing problems for her, I'm out. She comes first, always." "I wouldn't expect anything less." Her relief was palpable even through the phone. Thank you for taking this chance. I know it's scary. Terrifying, he admitted, but maybe that means it's worth it. They talked for another hour, navigating the practical logistics of being something more than secret friends. Ava would talk to HR, make sure everything was documented and above board. They'd be open about seeing each other without making a spectacle of it. They'd take things slow, especially where Emma was concerned. It all sounded reasonable and manageable and completely insufficient to prepare them for what came next. The shift happened gradually at first. Liam still made his deliveries, still navigated the same corridors and loading docks. But now, when he saw Ava in the elevator or the lobby, she smiled, really smiled. And sometimes they'd grab coffee together in the commissary, sitting at a table like any two colleagues taking a break. The whispers intensified, but so did something else. Respect, maybe. Or at least curiosity that wasn't entirely malicious. People started seeing Liam differently. Not as the CEO's boy toy, as he'd feared, but as someone who'd somehow managed to break through the Ice Queen's defenses. Sinclair actually laughs now, he overheard someone say in the break room. Like genuine laughs. It's weird, but kind of nice. His supervisor called him in for a meeting that Liam had been dreading, but instead of warnings or termination, he got promoted. A lateral move into project coordination with better hours and a salary bump that would mean Emma could finally do those summer camps she'd been begging for. This has nothing to do with your personal life, his supervisor said carefully. Your work has been exemplary for years. We should have moved you up sooner. But Liam knew better. Ava's influence, however subtle, was there. Not nepotism, his record genuinely warranted the promotion, but her attention had shone a light on someone who'd been invisible for too long. Emma adjusted to Ava's presence in their lives with the adaptability of children, accepting her as a fixture in their routines. Ava came to soccer games and helped with homework, and learned to make Emma's favorite grilled cheese the exact way she liked it. Cheese slightly burned, bread perfectly golden. And slowly, carefully, what they were building started to feel less like a dangerous mistake and more like something that had been missing from both their lives all along. But peace, Liam was learning, was always temporary. The storm came on a Thursday night, 6 weeks after they'd stopped hiding. Liam had just put Emma to bed when his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Carter? The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. This is Jennifer Walsh from Corporate Weekly. I'm running a story about workplace relationships at major tech companies, and your name has come up in relation to Ms. Sinclair. Would you care to comment? His stomach dropped. No comment. I understand this might be uncomfortable, but the story is running regardless. I thought you might want the opportunity to tell your side. She paused. There are some who say this relationship represents a significant conflict of interest, that Ms. Sinclair's judgment may be compromised, that preferential treatment has been given. Don't you think the public deserves transparency? I said no comment. He ended the call, his hands shaking. The article went live the next morning. The headline was sensational and cruel. Tech CEO's secret romance raises questions about corporate ethics. The piece was carefully worded to avoid outright libel, but the implications were clear. Ava Sinclair had been carrying on an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, questions about his recent promotion, speculation about favoritism, and compromised leadership. There was a photo, grainy but unmistakable, of them leaving his apartment building together, Ava's hand on his arm, both of them laughing about something Emma had said. A private moment made public. Weaponized. His phone started ringing before he'd even finished reading. Marcus, his sister Sarah, numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all and called the only person who mattered. I'm so sorry, Ava said immediately, her voice tight with something between anger and devastation. I'm handling it. My legal team is already drafting responses, and we're looking into how they got that photo. Ava, this is exactly what I was afraid of. I know, and I'm not going to let them destroy what we have because they need a scandal to sell papers. She took a breath, steadied herself. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. I'm going to address this head on, make it clear that our relationship is consensual and that all appropriate protocols were followed. They can question my judgment all they want, but they can't question the facts. What about Emma? What happens when her classmates' parents read this? When she has to field questions about her dad dating his boss? The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. I'll understand if you need to walk away, Ava said finally, her voice small in a way he'd never heard before. If protecting Emma means ending this, I'll understand. I won't fight you. Liam looked toward Emma's bedroom door, thought about his daughter sleeping peacefully, unaware that her life was about to get complicated in ways she didn't deserve. Thought about Ava, who'd risked everything for a chance at something real. Thought about himself and what kind of man he wanted to be when faced with the choice between fear and courage. No, he said firmly, we don't walk away. We face this together. But Ava, we do it my way. No legal teams, no PR spin. We tell the truth, simple and direct, and we let people decide for themselves. What truth? That you're a woman who deserves happiness, that I'm a man who deserves the same, that we found each other in the least likely place possible, and we're not going to apologize for it. His voice softened. That sometimes the best things in life are the ones that don't make sense on paper. He could hear her breathing, could almost see her processing, weighing options with that brilliant analytical mind. Okay, she said, we do it your way, together. And for the first time since his phone had rung with that reporter's voice, Liam felt something that wasn't fear. He felt ready. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning at 8. Liam spent the weekend in a state of controlled anxiety, oscillating between conviction and doubt, between the certainty that they were doing the right thing and the terror that he was about to destroy both their lives. Emma sensed something was wrong. She always did. You keep checking your phone, she observed Saturday morning over breakfast. Her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. And you made my cereal wrong. Liam looked down at the bowl he'd prepared. Too much milk, the cereal already soggy. He'd been operating on autopilot, his mind 3 days ahead to a conference room where his relationship would be dissected by people who saw him as a liability. Sorry, kiddo, I'll make you a new one. I don't want a new one. I want you to tell me what's wrong. Emma set down her spoon with the deliberate precision of someone much older than 8. Is it about Ms. Ava? He should have known better than to try hiding things from her. Emma had inherited his emotional intelligence and amplified it, reading people the way other kids read picture books. Some people are saying not nice things about me and Miss Ava spending time together, Liam said carefully, dumping the soggy cereal and starting fresh. Grown-up stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. Because she's your boss. Something like that. Emma considered this, her face scrunched in concentration. But you were friends before you worked together, right? I mean, she helped with my volcano before you got your new job. That's true. Then it doesn't matter what other people say. You know the truth. She picked up her spoon again. The matter settled in her mind with the absolute certainty of childhood logic. Besides, Miss Ava is nice. People who say mean things about nice people are just jealous. Liam felt something loosen in his chest. Out of the mouths of babes, as his mother used to say. Emma had cut through all the complexity and corporate politics and media scrutiny to the simple truth underneath. They knew what they had. That was what mattered. His phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Can I come over? I need to see you before Monday. Always, he wrote back. She arrived an hour later looking like she hadn't slept, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail that was so unlike her usual polished appearance that Emma actually gasped. Ms. Ava, your hair is doing the thing my dad's does when he forgets to comb it, Emma announced with the brutal honesty only children could deliver. Ava laughed, tired but genuine. You're absolutely right. I've had a rough couple of days. Do you want to help me build a fort? Dad says fort building is therapeutic. I said it's a good distraction, Liam corrected, but he was smiling. And yes, I think Miss Ava could use a good distraction right about now. They spent the afternoon in the living room, draping blankets over furniture and securing them with books and strategic pillow placement. Emma directed the operation with the authority of a general, Ava followed instructions with surprising enthusiasm, and Liam watched them both with an ache in his chest that felt like happiness and heartbreak mixed together. This was what he stood to lose if Monday went wrong. Not just Ava, but this, the easy domesticity, the laughter, the way Emma's face lit up when Ava praised her architectural vision. His daughter had lost one mother already. He couldn't bear the thought of her losing another person she was starting to love. When Emma finally crawled into the finished fort with her tablet and headphones, disappearing into whatever cartoon currently held her attention, Ava and Liam retreated to the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. "My lawyer thinks I should settle," she said without preamble. "Offer the reporter money to retract the story, make it go away quietly. What do you think?" "I think that's exactly what people expect me to do. Throw money at problems until they disappear." She rubbed her eyes, smearing the minimal makeup she'd applied. "I think I'm tired of doing what's expected." Liam moved closer, close enough to take her hands. They were cold despite the warmth of his apartment. "What happened?" he asked gently. "Something else happened." Ava's laugh was brittle. "My mother called. We haven't spoken in 3 years, not since my father's funeral, and even then barely. But apparently she reads Corporate Weekly." She looked down at their joined hands. "She wanted to make sure I knew I was embarrassing the family legacy, that my father would be ashamed, that I was throwing away everything he built for a—" She stopped, her jaw tightening. "For a what?" "It doesn't matter." "Ava, for a what?" She met his eyes, and he saw the hurt there, raw and unfiltered. "For a nobody. That's what she said. That I was risking everything for a nobody." The words hit harder than they should have. Liam had never harbored illusions about his place in the world's hierarchy. He was a single father with a high school education, working a job that most people didn't even notice existed. By conventional measures, he was exactly what Ava's mother had called him. Nobody. But the way Ava was looking at him, like the word had physically wounded her, made him realize something important. She didn't see him that way. She never had. "Your mother's wrong," Liam said quietly. "Not about me being a risk to everything you've built. That part might be true. But about me being nobody." He squeezed her hands. "I'm somebody to Emma. I'm somebody to the people I work with who know I'll always cover their shifts when their kids are sick. I'm somebody to you, or at least I hope I am." "You're everything to me," Ava whispered. "That's the problem. That's what terrifies me. I've built my entire identity around being self-sufficient, around not needing anyone, around being strong enough to stand alone. And then you came along and just—" She gestured helplessly. "You broke through everything I thought I knew about myself." "I gave you a shirt," Liam said, trying to lighten the moment. "You gave me so much more than that." She pulled one hand free to touch his face, her palm warm against his cheek. "You gave me permission to be human, to be vulnerable, to want something that doesn't fit neatly into a business plan." From the living room came Emma's voice, calling out that she'd found a show about marine dinosaurs, and could they please come watch because it was extremely important and educational. Ava smiled, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "She's wonderful, you know. You've done an incredible job with her." "She's the best thing I've ever done," Liam agreed. "And that's why Monday matters so much. Whatever happens in that boardroom, I need to know she'll be okay." "She will be, because she has you." Ava took a breath, straightened her spine in that way she did when she was preparing for battle. "And on Monday, I'm going to make sure everyone in that room understands that you're not some scandal to be managed or mistake to be corrected. You're the best decision I've made in years." They joined Emma in the fort, squeezing into the blanket-draped space that smelled like lavender fabric softener in childhood. The three of them watched documentaries about prehistoric ocean life, Emma narrating facts with enthusiastic authority, Ava asking questions that made Emma glow with the pleasure of sharing knowledge, Liam watching both of them and trying to memorize this moment in case it was one of the last peaceful ones they'd have. Ava left after Emma's bedtime, kissing Liam softly at the door with a tenderness that felt like both a promise and a goodbye. "Whatever happens Monday," she started. "We'll handle it," he finished. "Together." She nodded, but he could see the doubt in her eyes, the fear that together might not be enough against the forces already mobilizing against them. Sunday passed in a blur of normal weekend activities that felt anything but normal. Liam took Emma to the park, helped her practice her multiplication tables, made dinner that neither of them ate much of. His phone stayed mercifully quiet, but the silence felt ominous rather than peaceful, like the calm before a storm that was definitely coming. He put Emma to bed early, read her 3 extra chapters of her current favorite book, and tucked her in with probably too many kisses on her forehead. "Daddy?" she asked sleepily. "Is everything going to be okay?" He wanted to lie, to give her the certainty that children deserved. But he'd never lied to Emma, and he wasn't going to start now. I don't know, baby. I hope so. Me too, she mumbled, already drifting off. I really like Miss Ava. I don't want her to go away. I don't either. He sat on the edge of her bed long after she'd fallen asleep, watching her peaceful face and praying to whoever might be listening that the choices he'd made wouldn't end up hurting her. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of tides and taxes. Liam dropped Emma at school, hugged her tighter than usual, and drove to the office with his stomach in knots. He'd borrowed a suit from Marcus. They weren't quite the same size, but it was close enough, because showing up to a board meeting in his usual work clothes felt like conceding defeat before the fight even started. The executive floor felt different when he stepped off the elevator at 7:45, or showing hostile maybe. Or maybe that was just his imagination painting threat onto familiar territory. Ava's assistant, Jennifer, gave him a small, encouraging smile as he approached. She's expecting you, Jennifer said quietly. Conference room B. Go on in. The conference room was exactly what he'd expected. All glass and expensive furniture and a view of the city that probably cost more than most people's houses. Ava was already there, standing by the window in a navy suit that made her look every inch the CEO. When she turned to face him, he saw the armor she'd put on, the professional mask, the careful composure, the woman who commanded billion-dollar deals and made grown men nervous. But her eyes, when they met his, were all vulnerability. You came, she said. Did you think I wouldn't? I gave you an out last night. I wouldn't have blamed you if you'd taken it. Liam crossed the room to stand beside her, looking out at the city sprawling beneath them. I'm not very good at running away from things that matter. Even when staying might cost you everything? Especially then. The door opened behind them. Board members filed in, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile to carefully neutral. Liam recognized some of them from photos in the company newsletter, others from brief encounters in elevators or hallways where they'd looked through him rather than at him. Now they were definitely looking at him. The chairman, a silver-haired man named Richard Thornton, who'd been with the company since before Ava took over, took his seat at the head of the table with the gravity of someone about to conduct surgery rather than a meeting. Miss Sinclair, he began, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority. Thank you for calling this meeting. I think we all understand why we're here. I do, Ava said, moving to stand at the opposite end of the table. She gestured to Liam. This is Liam Carter. Many of you may recognize him from the recent article in Corporate Weekly, but I doubt many of you actually know him. I'd like to correct that. Liam felt every eye in the room shift to him, assessing, judging, calculating. He forced himself to stand straighter, to meet their gazes without flinching. Mr. Carter, Ava continued, has worked for this company for 7 years. In that time, his performance reviews have been exemplary, his attendance record is nearly perfect, and his colleagues consistently describe him as reliable, kind, and professional. His recent promotion to project coordinator was based entirely on merit, approved by his direct supervisor before anyone in this room knew about our relationship. With all due respect, a woman Liam didn't recognize interrupted, his qualifications aren't what we're here to discuss. Aren't they? Ava's voice was sharp. Because it seems to me that the article questions whether his promotion was deserved, whether his work is valued on its own merits, or whether he's received preferential treatment. I'm establishing the facts before we discuss the implications. Richard leaned forward. The facts, Ms. Sinclair, are that you engaged in a romantic relationship with a subordinate without disclosing it to this board until after it became a media scandal. That shows poor judgment at best. And at worst, it suggests the kind of ethical lapse that shareholders take very seriously. I disclosed the relationship to HR 6 weeks ago, Ava countered. All proper protocols were followed. The fact that I didn't make an announcement to the board about my personal life is because it's exactly that, personal. Nothing about your life is personal when you're the face of this company, another board member chimed in. Your judgment affects stock prices, investor confidence, corporate reputation. You had to know this would become public eventually. I knew it was possible, Ava admitted. I also knew that I was tired of living my life according to what's convenient for stock prices. I'm 30 years old. I've dedicated the last 7 years to building this company into what it is today. I've sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of work-life balance. And for what? So I can stand here and be told that finding happiness with a good man is a liability? It's not about him being a good man or a bad man, Richard said, his tone softening slightly. It's about optics, about the message it sends when the CEO dates an employee, about the legal exposure it creates. Liam had been silent through all of this, but now he spoke, his voice quiet but steady in the charged air. May I say something? The room went silent. All eyes turned to him again, some surprised that he'd spoken, others wary of what he might say. Mr. Carter, Richard said slowly, I'm not sure that's appropriate. Let him speak, Ava interrupted. He has as much stake in this as I do. Liam took a breath, channeling every ounce of courage he possessed. You're right that optics matter. I get that. I also get that I'm not what any of you probably imagined when you thought about who your CEO might end up with. I'm not a venture capitalist or a tech genius or someone who moves in your circles. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But here's what I am. I'm a father who's raised a daughter on my own for the past 6 years. I'm someone who shows up every day and does my job to the best of my ability. I'm a person who believes that kindness matters more than status, that character matters more than connections. Some of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, actually listening. The night I met Ava, really met her, she was grieving her father. She was alone in a conference room, crying, and I knocked on the door because I heard someone in pain and wanted to help. That's it. No agenda, no scheme, no gold digger fantasy that I'm sure some of you are imagining. A few faces flushed at that, confirming his suspicion. What happened after that? What's happening now? It's real. It's genuine. And yeah, it's complicated because of who she is and who I'm not. But I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to stand here and let you reduce what we have to a liability or an optics problem. He looked at Ava, saw the tears she was fighting to keep from falling, saw the pride and fear and love all mixed together in her expression. She's the most remarkable person I've ever met, Liam continued, his voice thick with emotion. Not because she's a CEO or because she built this company, because she's brave enough to be vulnerable, because she makes my daughter laugh, because when life knocked her down, she let me help her back up, even though everything in her world told her to stay strong and isolated. He turned back to the board. So if you want to fire me, fine. If you want to force Ava to choose between this company and our relationship, that's your right. But don't pretend it's about ethics or optics or legal exposure. It's about the fact that people in power aren't supposed to fall for people without it. That's what really bothers you. Not that we're together, but that we're together despite everything that says we shouldn't be. The silence that followed was absolute. Liam could hear his own heartbeat, could feel sweat forming at his collar, could sense the enormity of what he'd just said settling over the room like snow. Richard was the first to speak, his voice measured and thoughtful, in a way it hadn't been before. Mr. Carter, that was quite a speech. It was the truth. I believe you. Richard looked around the table, reading the room with practiced ease, and I suspect I'm not alone in that belief. The woman who'd interrupted earlier spoke up again, but her tone had shifted. Ms. Sinclair, did you disclose this relationship to HR before or after the promotion was approved? Before, Ava said firmly, 3 days before. And I recused myself from any involvement in the approval process. His supervisor made the decision based solely on his performance record. And if someone were to file a complaint alleging favoritism or harassment, how would you respond? I would cooperate fully with any investigation, provide all documentation of our relationship timeline, and submit to whatever oversight this board deems appropriate. Ava's voice was steady, professional, but Liam could see her hands trembling slightly at her sides. But I won't end this relationship to appease unfounded speculation. And I won't punish Mr. Carter for my choices by creating a hostile work environment. Another board member, a younger man Liam vaguely recognized from company events, spoke up. I move that we table this discussion pending a formal review by our legal and HR departments. Let them assess whether any actual policies were violated, rather than trying to adjudicate matters of the heart. Seconded, someone else said. Richard nodded slowly. All in favor? A majority of hands went up. Not unanimous. A few board members sat with arms crossed, clearly unconvinced. But enough. Motion carries, Richard announced. He looked at Ava with an expression that might have been respect. Miss Sinclair, you'll cooperate fully with the review. In the meantime, I suggest you and Mr. Carter maintain appropriate professional boundaries within the workplace, and perhaps consider whether a joint statement to the press might help control the narrative. Thank you, Ava said quietly. Don't thank me yet. If this review finds any impropriety, we'll be having a very different conversation. Richard stood, signaling the meeting's end. But I'll admit, Mr. Carter's points weren't entirely without merit. Sometimes we get so focused on protecting the institution that we forget it's made up of people. People who deserve the chance at happiness, even when it's inconvenient. The board members filed out, some offering brief nods to Ava, others studiously avoiding eye contact with Liam. When the room was finally empty except for the two of them, Ava let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for the past hour. That was, she started, terrifying? Incredible. She moved toward him, closing the distance between them with quick steps. You were incredible. Everything you said, I meant every word. I know. That's what made it so powerful. She reached for his hands, gripping them tightly. I've been in hundreds of board meetings, negotiated deals worth billions, faced down hostile investors and corporate raiders. Nothing has ever scared me as much as watching you stand up there and defend us. Scared you? Why? Because I realized how much I stand to lose if this goes wrong. Because for the first time in my life, I care more about something than I care about the company. Her eyes searched his face. Is that crazy? Is it insane that I'd risk everything I've built for this? Liam thought about Emma, asking if everything would be okay. Thought about his own fears and doubts, and all the rational reasons to walk away. Thought about the moment in that conference room weeks ago when he'd knocked on the door instead of walking past. Maybe, he said, but maybe the best things in life are a little bit insane. She kissed him then, right there in the conference room with its glass walls and city views, and Liam kissed her back with everything he had, all the fear and hope and desperate love he'd been trying to keep contained. When they finally pulled apart, Ava rested her forehead against his. Whatever comes next, she whispered, we face it together. Promise me. I promise. And in that moment, standing in a conference room on the 30th floor of a building where he'd once been invisible, Liam Carter understood something fundamental about courage. It wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing love anyway, choosing hope anyway, choosing to believe that sometimes the smallest acts, a borrowed shirt, a knock on a door, a hand offered in darkness, could change everything. The review process took 3 weeks of interviews, document requests, and scrutiny that left both of them exhausted. But it also forced the company to examine its own policies, to confront the reality that prohibiting relationships between employees at different levels assumed that power dynamics couldn't be navigated with honesty and respect. The final report found no violations. Liam's promotion was deemed merit-based. The timeline of their relationship confirmed that all disclosures had been made appropriately. The recommendation was to update company policy to require disclosure rather than prohibition, to treat employees as adults capable of managing their own lives. The press coverage gradually shifted too. What had started as a scandal evolved into a more nuanced conversation about workplace relationships, about the changing nature of corporate culture, about whether old rules still made sense in a world that was rapidly evolving. And through it all, Liam kept showing up, to work, to Emma's school events, to Ava's apartment for quiet dinners that felt like home. He kept being exactly who he was, refusing to apologize for it, refusing to shrink himself to fit into anyone else's expectations. That, more than any board meeting or press statement, was what changed things. Not the grand gestures or dramatic speeches, but the simple, stubborn persistence of being genuine in a world that often rewarded performance over authenticity. The smallest acts, he was learning, really did mean everything. The weeks following the board's decision brought changes that rippled outward in ways neither Liam nor Ava had anticipated. It started small. A shift in atmosphere that was more felt than seen, like the first hint of spring after a long winter. Liam noticed it first in the break room. He'd stopped by to refill his coffee, expecting the usual polite nods and carefully averted eyes that had become standard since the article broke. Instead, Sarah Chen from accounting actually sat down across from him at the communal table. "Hey," she said, stirring creamer into her mug with studied casualness. "I wanted to say something. About all that stuff in the news. Liam braced himself. Okay. My boyfriend works in the mailroom. We've been together 2 years, and I've been terrified to tell anyone because I didn't want either of us to get in trouble. She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. But watching you and Miss Sinclair just be honest about it, it made me realize I was tired of hiding, so we disclosed to HR yesterday. Sarah, that's... wow. How did it go? Better than I expected. They updated our files, reminded us about maintaining professionalism, and that was it. No drama, no threats. She smiled, genuine and warm. So thank you for being brave enough to go first. She left before he could respond, but her words stayed with him through the rest of the day. He mentioned it to Ava that evening, over takeout in her apartment, a space that had become as familiar to him as his own, filled with Emma's drawings on the refrigerator and toys scattered across the expensive hardwood floors. Sarah Chen and her boyfriend disclosed, he said, spearing a piece of orange chicken. She said we inspired her. Ava looked up from her laptop, glasses perched on her nose in that way that made her look simultaneously professional and adorable. That's the 5th couple this week. 5th? Jennifer told me. Apparently HR has been flooded with relationship disclosures, people who've been hiding for months or years, suddenly feeling safe enough to be honest. She closed her laptop, giving him her full attention. The director of HR called it the Sinclair effect. Liam laughed. That sounds like something from a superhero movie. It kind of is, though. You don't realize how much fear controls people until you give them permission to stop being afraid. She moved from the couch to sit beside him at the small dining table, stealing a piece of his chicken. Remember that first day when you asked why I was wearing your shirt? Hard to forget. I was terrified that morning. Terrified someone would notice, would ask questions, would make the connection. But then you walked in and just existed. No judgment, no demands, just quiet acceptance. She reached for his hand. That's what we're giving people now, permission to exist honestly. Emma emerged from Ava's bedroom where she'd been doing homework, her face scrunched in concentration. Dad, what's 6 times 7? What do you think it is? Liam asked, the automatic response of a parent trying to encourage problem solving. 42, but that seems too perfect, like it's the answer to everything. Ava laughed, nearly choking on her stolen chicken. Your daughter is quoting Douglas Adams. She's 8. Aunt Sarah gave her the book last month. I'm not sure she understands most of it, but she likes the jokes. Liam grinned at Emma. And yes, 42 is correct. Emma pumped her fist in victory and returned to the bedroom, leaving the adults in comfortable silence. These evenings had become routine over the past month. Dinner together, homework help, the easy domesticity of 3 lives weaving together into something that felt increasingly permanent. But permanence, Liam was learning, required more than just comfort. It required intention. I need to talk to you about something, he said, setting down his fork. Ava's expression shifted to concern. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just important. He took a breath. Emma asked me this morning if you were going to be her new mom. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Ava set down her own fork carefully, as if it might shatter. What did you tell her? I told her that you're very important to both of us, and that we're taking things one day at a time. He met her eyes. But the truth is, Ava, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know what we're building here, or where it's going, or if we're on the same page about any of it. Ava was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. I never wanted children. Did I ever tell you that? No. My mother is cold, distant. She raised me like I was a project to be managed, rather than a person to be loved. My father was better, but he was always working, always building, always focused on the next deal. She looked toward the bedroom where Emma was working. I told myself I'd never have kids because I wouldn't know how to do it differently. I'd just repeat their mistakes. Liam's throat tightened. Ava? But then I met Emma, and everything I thought I knew about myself turned out to be wrong. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. She's incredible, Liam. Smart and funny and so full of life. And when she hugs me goodnight or shows me her homework or tells me about some dinosaur fact she learned, I feel like maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be someone she'd want in her life. She already wants you in her life. That's not the question. Then what is? Liam chose his words carefully. The question is whether you want to be in her life as someone who's dating her dad or as someone who's becoming part of her family. Because those are different things, Ava. One is temporary, flexible, no strings attached. The other is a commitment that doesn't end if things get hard between us. Understanding dawned in Ava's expression. You're asking if I'm in this for the long haul. I'm asking if you're ready for what that means. Because Emma's 8. If you're part of her life now, she's going to expect you to be part of it when she's 9 and 10 and graduating high school. She's going to expect you at soccer games and school plays and those awful recorder concerts that every parent suffers through. I hate recorders, Ava said with feeling. Everyone hates recorders. That's not the point. I know. She stood, walked to the window that overlooked the city, her city in many ways, the empire she'd built. 6 months ago, my biggest fear was losing this company, failing the employees who depend on me, disappointing the board, proving all the people who said I was too young and inexperienced right. She turned back to face him. Now my biggest fear is losing you and Emma. It's terrifying, Liam. I've spent my whole life being in control, and this, us, it's completely out of my control. I can't strategize my way into being a good partner or a good parental figure. I can't run the numbers on whether this relationship will succeed. No, Liam agreed. You can't. But I can show up every day, even when it's hard. I can choose you both over and over, until choosing you becomes as natural as breathing. She crossed back to him, knelt beside his chair so they were eye level. So yes, I'm in this for the long haul. The recorders and the soccer games and the teenage years that I'm already dreading. All of it. Liam cupped her face in his hands, seeing past the CEO and the corporate titan to the woman who'd let him see her cry, who'd worn his shirt like armor, who'd fought a board of directors to keep him in her life. I love you, he said, the words coming easier than he'd expected. I think I've been falling in love with you since that rainy night, but I was too scared to admit it. I love you too. Ava's tears finally spilled over. I love how you make coffee with too much sugar. I love how you talk to Emma like she's a person, not a child. I love that you gave me your shirt and didn't ask for anything in return. They kissed, soft and sweet, and full of promises neither of them fully understood yet, but both were willing to figure out together. Emma's voice broke the moment. Are you guys being gross? Aunt Sarah says when grown-ups kiss too much, it's gross. They broke apart, laughing. Liam pulled Emma into a hug, Ava joining them until it became a 3-person tangle of limbs and affection. Yes, Liam told his daughter. We're being gross. Deal with it. Emma wrinkled her nose, but didn't pull away. Does this mean Ms. Ava is staying? If you want me to, Ava said carefully. Emma pretended to think about it, her face serious. I guess that would be okay, but you have to learn to make grilled cheese the right way. Dad's okay at it, but he always burns the cheese a little. I do not burn the cheese, Liam protested. You do, both Emma and Ava said in unison, then dissolved into giggles. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in Ava's guest room, which was slowly transforming into Emma's room, with posters and books and stuffed animals, Liam and Ava sat on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. Things are going to change at work, Ava said quietly. The board approved the new relationship disclosure policy. It goes into effect next month. That's good, isn't it? It is. But it also means we need to be more careful, more above board. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm going to start walking the floors more. Really seeing people the way I saw you that night. The company's gotten too big, too impersonal. People like Sarah hiding relationships for years because they're afraid. That's not the culture I want to build. That's going to be a lot of work. Everything worth doing is. She laced her fingers through his. But I'm going to need help. Someone who knows how to talk to people, who sees them as individuals rather than resources. Liam raised an eyebrow. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. Not romantic, professional. Director of Employee Relations. New position, reporting directly to HR. She turned to look at him. You'd be the bridge between management and staff. The person who makes sure people feel heard, valued, seen. Ava, I don't have the credentials for that kind of position. I barely finished high school. You have something better than credentials. You have emotional intelligence, genuine empathy, and a track record of treating everyone with respect regardless of their title. Her voice was firm. I'm not offering this because we're together. I'm offering it because you're the right person for the job. But I need you to think about it carefully. Make sure you want it for the right reasons. Liam thought about Sarah Chen's gratitude, about the 5 couples who'd disclosed their relationships, about the ripple effects of simply being honest. Thought about all the people in the building who felt invisible, overlooked, reduced to their function rather than recognized for their humanity. Can I have some time to think about it? Take all the time you need. But even as he said it, Liam knew his answer. This was what he'd been doing informally for years, seeing people, connecting with them, making them feel valued. The opportunity to do it officially, to create real change in the company culture, was too significant to pass up. The conversation with Marcus the next day confirmed it. "You'd be insane not to take it," Marcus said, leaning against the delivery truck. "Do you know how rare it is to get offered a director position without a college degree?" "I know, that's what makes me nervous." "What if I'm only getting it because of Ava?" Marcus gave him a look that was equal parts exasperation and affection. "Man, you helped me get through my divorce last year. You covered my shifts for 2 weeks when my mom was sick, and you never asked for anything in return. You've been doing this job without the title or the pay for as long as I've known you. That's different. That's just being a decent person." Exactly. And that's exactly what this company needs in that role. Someone who gives a damn about people, not just metrics. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Take the job, Liam. You've earned it. And anyone who says otherwise doesn't know you." Liam accepted the position the following week. The announcement was met with mixed reactions. Some skepticism from management who questioned his qualifications, genuine excitement from employees who'd worked with him, and a few raised eyebrows from people who still saw him primarily as the CEO's boyfriend. But he showed up anyway, diving into the work with the same steady persistence that had defined his entire life. He instituted monthly town halls where employees could voice concerns directly. He created an anonymous feedback system that actually got read and addressed. He started a mentorship program pairing senior staff with newer employees. And slowly, measurably, the culture began to shift. It manifested in small ways at first. More laughter in the break rooms. People staying late not because they had to, but because they wanted to finish projects they cared about. Collaboration across departments that had previously operated in silos. The quarterly employee satisfaction survey showed a 15% increase in morale. Turnover dropped by 20%. Productivity increased without any new mandates or pressure from management. The board noticed. The shareholders noticed. The industry noticed. Corporate Weekly, the same publication that had run the original hit piece on Liam and Ava's relationship, requested an interview. Liam's first instinct was to refuse, but Ava convinced him otherwise. "They started this narrative," she said. "Let's give them a chance to correct it." The interview took place in the same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first dinner. The journalist, a younger woman named Amanda Reeves, clearly nervous about the assignment. "I appreciate you agreeing to this," Amanda said, setting up her recorder. "I know our publication wasn't exactly kind to you initially." "That's one way to put it," Liam said mildly. "For what it's worth, I disagreed with how that story was framed. I think there was a more interesting angle that got lost in the scandal." "Which was?" "That sometimes the best leadership comes from the most unlikely places. That maybe we've been promoting the wrong people for the wrong reasons." Amanda glanced at her notes. "You've been in your new role for 3 months. The results are objectively impressive. Walk me through your approach." Liam talked about seeing people, about creating space for honesty, about the importance of emotional intelligence in corporate culture. He talked about the disclosure policy and how it was changing workplace dynamics. He talked about Sarah Chen and the dozens of other employees who'd found the courage to be authentic. "It's not rocket science," he concluded. "It's just basic human decency applied systematically. People want to feel valued. They want to know their contributions matter. They want to work for a company that sees them as whole people, not just productivity units." And the relationship with Ms. Sinclair? How do you navigate that while maintaining credibility? "We're transparent about it. We disclose when we're working on overlapping projects. We're careful about how decisions might be perceived." He met Amanda's eyes directly. "But we also don't apologize for it." We're two people who found each other in an unexpected place, and we're building something real. That's not a conflict of interest, it's just life. The article ran 2 weeks later with the headline, "The Compassion Economy: How One Man's Kindness is Revolutionizing Corporate Culture." It was thoughtful, nuanced, and fair, everything the first article hadn't been. Liam read it at his desk, his actual desk, in an actual office with windows and a door that closed, and felt something settle in his chest. Not vindication exactly, but a sense of rightness. The story had shifted from scandal to something more meaningful. His phone buzzed. Emma, texting from school during what was probably supposed to be quiet reading time. "Dad! Madison's mom showed her the article about you. She says you're famous. Not famous, just doing my job. That's what famous people always say. Can we get pizza to celebrate? You don't need an excuse for pizza." But yes. Ava appeared in his doorway a moment later, holding her own copy of the magazine. "Have you seen this?" "Just finished reading it." She came in, closed the door, and kissed him with a thoroughness that suggested she'd been thinking about doing it all morning. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, she was smiling. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "I'm just doing what you gave me the opportunity to do." "No, you're doing what you were always capable of. I just gave you the platform." She sat on the edge of his desk. "The board wants to expand the employee relations department. They want you to hire a team, scale up what you've been doing." "That's incredible." "It is, and Liam—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I need you to know that this is yours. Not something you got because of our relationship, but something you earned through your work. The data speaks for itself." He understood what she was really saying, that she needed him to believe in his own merit, to trust that his success wasn't tainted by their connection. It was the same doubt he'd been carrying since accepting the position, the same insecurity that whispered he was only here because the CEO loved him. "I know," he said, and for the first time he actually meant it. That evening, the three of them celebrated with pizza and ice cream, Emma chattering about her day while Liam and Ava exchanged glances across the table that spoke of shared understanding and quiet joy. This was what they'd built. Not just a relationship, but a life. Messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep between them on the couch during a movie, Ava whispered, "She asked me something today." "What?" "If I was going to marry you." Liam's heart stuttered. "What did you say?" "I told her I hoped so someday. Was that okay?" He looked down at Emma, her face peaceful in sleep, then at Ava, her expression vulnerable despite the confidence she wore like armor everywhere else. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's more than okay." Because somewhere between a borrowed shirt and a company transformation, between a rainy night and a magazine article, between fear and courage, they'd become something neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. A family. The kind built not on grand gestures, but on small acts of kindness, repeated daily, accumulating into something that changed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. The ripple, Liam realized, was still spreading, and it showed no signs of stopping. The months that followed Emma's question about marriage brought a kind of settled contentment that Liam had never quite experienced before. It wasn't the breathless excitement of new love or the dramatic intensity of fighting for their relationship against corporate scrutiny. It was something deeper, more sustaining, the quiet certainty of building something that would last. His team and employee relations had grown to 5 people, each one carefully chosen not for their credentials, but for their capacity for empathy. Together, they'd implemented programs that were changing the company from the inside out: peer mentoring, mental health resources, flexible work arrangements that acknowledged people had lives beyond their desks. The numbers continued to tell the story that words couldn't fully capture. Employee retention was at an all-time high. Productivity metrics had stabilized at levels that didn't require people to sacrifice their well-being. The company's reputation as a place where people actually wanted to work was attracting top talent from competitors. But it was the small moments that mattered most to Liam. The way people smiled when they saw him in the hallways now, not with the careful politeness of subordinates, but with genuine warmth. The thank you notes that appeared on his desk from employees who felt heard for the first time in years. The quiet revolution of a workplace becoming more human. Marcus cornered him one afternoon in what had once been their shared territory, the loading dock where they'd spent years moving boxes and talking about life. "You know what's weird?" Marcus said, leaning against the wall in a pose that Liam had seen 1,000 times. "I don't hate Mondays anymore." "That is weird. Should I be concerned about your health?" "I'm serious, man. I used to wake up every Monday with this knot in my stomach, dreading the week ahead. But now?" He shrugged. "I actually like coming to work. My supervisor asks how I'm doing and actually waits for the answer. I got approved for flexible hours, so I can pick my kids up from school twice a week. It's like working for a completely different company." "It's the same company. We just remembered it's made up of people." "Yeah, well, credit where it's due. You made that happen." Marcus's expression grew serious. "I was wrong, you know. When I warned you about getting involved with Ava, I thought you'd lose yourself trying to fit into her world. Instead, you changed her world to be more like yours." Liam felt his throat tighten. "I had a lot of help." "You always say that, but we both know the truth." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Liam Carter. Don't forget it." That evening, Liam found himself standing in a jewelry store downtown, staring at rings that cost more than he'd earned in entire years of his old salary. The saleswoman, polished, patient, laid out options with practiced ease, but none of them felt right. "What about this one?" she suggested, holding up a princess-cut diamond that caught the light like captured starlight. Very popular with executives. "She's not like other executives," Liam said quietly. Then, seeing something in the display case that made him pause, "Can I see that one?" The ring was simpler than the others, a single diamond set in a band that curved like gentle waves. Elegant without being ostentatious. Beautiful without demanding attention. "That's one of our custom pieces," the saleswoman said, pulling it from the case. "The designer calls it Quiet Storm. The idea is that true strength doesn't announce itself." Liam held the ring, feeling the weight of it, the promise it represented. He thought about Ava crying in a conference room, about the vulnerability she'd shown him when everything in her world told her to stay strong. Thought about her fighting a board of directors to keep him in her life. Thought about her learning to make grilled cheese exactly the way Emma liked it. True strength doesn't announce itself. "This is the one," he said. The saleswoman smiled, pulling out paperwork. "Excellent choice. Will you need financing options?" "No?" Liam pulled out his credit card, the good one, the one that came with his new salary, the one that proved he could afford to give the woman he loved something beautiful without going into debt. "I'll pay in full." Walking out of the store with the ring box in his pocket felt surreal, like he was living someone else's life. But when he checked his phone and saw a text from Ava, "Emma wants sushi for dinner. I told her we'd ask you first because you're the tiebreaker." The surreal feeling faded. This was his life. Improbable, unexpected, absolutely real. He texted back, "Sushi sounds perfect. I'll pick up Emma from soccer practice." The proposal needed to be perfect, but Liam quickly realized that his definition of perfect had changed over the past year. It wasn't about grand gestures or public declarations. It was about authenticity, about choosing a moment that belonged to them alone. He waited 3 weeks, the ring burning a hole in his pocket, until the right moment presented itself. It was a Saturday morning, one of those rare weekends when none of them had obligations or commitments. Emma had convinced them to go to the Natural History Museum. Her latest dinosaur obsession required seeing the new Cretaceous period exhibit. They'd spent hours wandering through ancient worlds, Emma narrating facts with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the museum guidebook, Ava asking questions that encouraged her to think deeper, Liam watching both of them with a fullness in his chest that felt like home. They ended up in the museum cafe, Emma demolishing a chocolate croissant while explaining the evolutionary advantages of the Ankylosaurus's tail club. Ava was listening with the same focused attention she brought to board meetings, and Liam realized this was it. This perfectly ordinary moment, full of chocolate crumbs and dinosaur facts and the easy comfort of 3 people who'd become a unit. "Emma," he said, interrupting her mid-sentence about defensive adaptations. "Can I talk to you about something important?" She looked up, suddenly serious in that way children get when they sense adult gravity. "Okay." Liam glanced at Ava, who'd gone very still, then back at his daughter. "You asked me a while ago if Ava was going to be your new mom. Do you remember?" Emma nodded slowly. I want to ask Ava to marry me, but before I do that, I need to know how you feel about it, because this isn't just about me and her. It's about all three of us. Emma's eyes went wide. She looked at Ava, then back at Liam, processing with the seriousness of someone being consulted on a major life decision, because that's exactly what this was. Would she live with us all the time? Emma asked. Probably, yeah. And would I have to call her mom? Ava spoke up, her voice gentle. You could call me whatever feels right to you, Emma. There's no rule that says you have to call me mom if you don't want to. Emma thought about this. What if I wanted to call you mom sometimes, but not all the time? That would be perfectly fine. And would you come to all my soccer games, even the boring ones where we lose? Especially those ones. And would you still help me with science projects, even though Dad says you're terrible at arts and crafts? Ava laughed. I am terrible at arts and crafts, but yes, I'll still help. Emma turned back to Liam, her expression grave. Okay, you can ask her. You're sure? I'm sure. Then, with the emotional intelligence that never ceased to amaze him, Dad, you're happier when she's around, and she's happier when we're around. That's what families are supposed to do, make each other happy. Liam felt tears sting his eyes. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always notice. Emma grinned, the gravity breaking into childish excitement. Are you going to ask her right now? Because that would be so cool. Right here in the museum cafe? Why not? It's where we are. Liam looked at Ava, who was crying silently, her hand pressed to her mouth. The cafe around them buzzed with other families, other lives, other moments. Nothing about this was conventional or picture perfect. It was exactly right. He pulled the ring box from his jacket pocket. He'd been carrying it everywhere for weeks, just in case, and got down on one knee right there on the museum cafe floor. A few nearby tables noticed, voices dropping to whispers, but Liam's entire world had narrowed to the woman in front of him and the daughter beside her. Ava Sinclair, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. You walked into my life wearing my shirt, and somehow that was the beginning of everything. You've made me braver, better, more willing to believe that good things can happen even when they don't make sense on paper. He opened the box, the diamond catching the fluorescent museum lighting. You've become the person Emma asks for when she's had a bad day. You've become the person I want to tell every small, ordinary thing that happens. You've become home. Ava was fully crying now, not bothering to hide it. Will you marry me? Will you build this life with us, officially and forever? Yes, Ava said, the word coming out choked with tears and laughter. Yes, absolutely yes. The cafe erupted in applause. Emma launched herself at both of them, creating a three-person hug on the museum cafe floor that was awkward and beautiful and perfect. Liam slipped the ring onto Ava's finger, and she stared at it like she couldn't quite believe it was real. Quiet Storm, she read from the inscription inside the band. That's what you think I am? That's what you are. Strong in ways that don't need to announce themselves. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise, while Emma made exaggerated gagging sounds that fooled absolutely no one. The engagement shifted something fundamental, making official what had already been true for months. They started planning a wedding that would be small and intimate, just family and close friends, nothing that resembled the corporate spectacle that some people expected. Emma appointed herself wedding planner, creating elaborate designs for centerpieces that involved far too many dinosaurs, but absolutely delighted everyone who saw them. But before the wedding, there was one more thing Liam needed to do. The company's annual celebration was approaching, a massive event where achievements were recognized and the year's progress was celebrated. Ava had been planning her keynote address for weeks, and Liam had been helping her refine it, offering perspective on how her words would land with employees who saw her very differently now than they had a year ago. 2 days before the event, Ava came to him with an unusual request. I want to tell our story, she said, pacing his office with nervous energy. Not the sanitized version or the corporate-approved narrative, the real story. The conference room, the shirt, the kindness that started everything. That's personal, Ava. Are you sure you want to share it with the whole company? I'm sure. Because it's not just our story anymore. It's become the story of what this company can be when we choose to see each other as human beings first. She stopped pacing, turning to face him. But I can't tell it alone. I need you there with me. On stage, in front of everyone? Yes. I know public speaking isn't your thing, and I know it's asking a lot. But this moment, it belongs to both of us. The company transformed because you had the courage to knock on a door when every instinct told you to walk away. People need to hear that. Not from me, but from you. Liam thought about that rainy night, about the choice he'd made without knowing it would change his entire life. Thought about all the small acts of kindness that had rippled outward, creating waves of change he never could have predicted. Okay, he said, we'll tell it together. The night of the celebration, the ballroom was packed with employees from every department, every level of the organization. Liam stood backstage with Ava, both of them nervous in ways that had nothing to do with public speaking and everything to do with vulnerability. You ready for this? Ava asked, squeezing his hand. Not even a little bit. You? Terrified, but we're doing it anyway. They walked out together to applause that felt generous rather than dutiful. Ava started the speech talking about the company's achievements, the metrics that proved they were on the right track, the industry recognition that validated their new approach. Then she paused, her expression softening. But numbers only tell part of the story, she said. The real story, the one I want to share with you tonight, started on a rainy night almost a year ago when I was alone in a conference room, crying over losses I thought I had to carry by myself. The room had gone silent, every person leaning forward. I'd just buried my father. I'd come back to the office because that's what I'd always done. Compartmentalize, separate grief from work, keep moving forward. But that night, something broke, and I found myself sobbing in an empty conference room, thinking no one would hear me, no one would care. She looked at Liam, gesturing for him to join her at the microphone. He took a breath and stepped forward, his voice finding strength despite his nerves. I heard her, Liam said simply. I was working late, and I heard someone crying. For a second, I thought about walking past. It wasn't my business. She was the CEO. I was a delivery clerk. What could I possibly offer her? But you knocked anyway, Ava continued, taking his hand. You knocked on the door and asked if I was okay, and when I let you in, you didn't try to fix me or give me advice. You just sat with me. You listened. You treated me like a person who needed kindness, not a CEO who needed to maintain appearances. Liam picked up the thread. Later that night, she spilled coffee on herself. It was such a small thing, almost silly, but I did something without thinking. I gave her my shirt, just took it off and handed it over because she needed it, and I had it. That shirt, Ava said, her voice thick with emotion, became a reminder that someone had seen me at my lowest and responded with simple human kindness. No agenda, no expectations, just compassion. She addressed the room directly now. The next morning, I wore that shirt to work. And when Liam saw me wearing it, when he asked why, it started a conversation that changed both of our lives. But more than that, it started changing this entire company. Liam continued. We learned that when you treat people as human beings first, with all the complexity and vulnerability that entails, everything else follows. Productivity improves because people feel valued. Retention increases because people want to stay. Innovation flourishes because people feel safe enough to take risks. The programs we've implemented this year, Ava said, the policies we've changed, the culture we've built, all of it traces back to that one rainy night, to the choice Liam made to care when it would have been easier not to. She paused, scanning the crowd. Many of you know that Liam and I are engaged. You've seen our relationship evolve from something we tried to keep private to something we're proud to share. But what you might not know is that every single day, he teaches me something about what it means to lead with heart instead of just head. Liam saw faces in the crowd, Sarah Chen and her boyfriend, Marcus grinning from the back, employees whose names he'd learned and whose stories he carried, people who'd been invisible made visible, people who'd found courage to be authentic because someone else went first. I'm not standing here to tell you a fairy tale, Liam said, his voice growing stronger. Our relationship has been complicated and messy and sometimes really hard. We've faced scrutiny and skepticism and people who thought we were making a mistake. But we kept showing up. We kept being honest. We kept choosing each other and choosing to believe that this company could be different. Ava's voice filled the space. And it is different. You've made it different. Every person who's disclosed a relationship they were hiding. Every employee who's used our mental health resources or flexible work policies. Every manager who's started actually listening to their team instead of just directing them. You've all contributed to a culture where people matter more than profits, though ironically, when people matter, profits follow. She took a breath, emotional but composed. I stand before you tonight not just as your CEO, but as someone who was broken and was helped by a good man who saw me as worth helping. And I want to challenge all of you to be that person for someone else, to knock on the door when you hear someone struggling, to offer your shirt, metaphorically or literally, when someone needs it, to choose kindness even when it's inconvenient. Liam finished the thought. Because kindness isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand recognition. It's quiet and often invisible. But it's also the most powerful force for change I've ever witnessed. That rainy night, Ava said, her hand still holding his, a simple act of compassion started a ripple that's still spreading. And I believe it will keep spreading through this company, through this industry, through every life touched by the people in this room, as long as we remember that we're all just human beings trying to navigate this complicated world together. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave, people rising to their feet, the sound filling the ballroom with something that felt like more than appreciation. It felt like recognition, like collective understanding. Liam and Ava stood together, accepting the response, but more importantly, standing as proof that the story they'd just told was real. That change was possible, that kindness mattered. Backstage afterward, Emma ran up to them with Aunt Sarah in tow, her face flushed with excitement. Dad, Ava! That was amazing! Everyone was crying, even the grumpy guy from accounting who never smiles. Liam scooped her up despite her protest that she was too old to be carried. What did you think of the speech? I think you're both really brave, and I think people needed to hear your story. Emma looked between them seriously. Ms. Henderson, my teacher, she says stories are how we learn to be better people. You just taught a whole room of people how to be better. Out of the mouths of babes, Liam thought again, setting Emma down and exchanging a look with Ava that needed no words. The wedding happened 3 months later on a Saturday morning in the small park where Liam used to take Emma when she was little. Nothing fancy, nothing corporate, just 40 people who mattered, sitting on benches under spring sunshine, watching two people promise to build a life together. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, taking her responsibilities with utmost seriousness. Marcus stood as Liam's best man, crying unashamedly through the entire ceremony. Ava's assistant, Jennifer, stood beside her, tissues ready, having long since crossed from professional to personal territory. The vows they wrote were simple and honest. Ava promised to always knock when she heard someone in pain, to never take the easy path when the right path was available, to love Emma as fiercely as she loved her father. Liam promised to keep seeing her, really seeing her, when the rest of the world only saw the CEO, to remind her that vulnerability was strength, to build with her a life defined not by achievements but by love. When they kissed, sealing promises that had really been sealed months ago in a conference room over borrowed shirts and shared tears, the applause was joyful and intimate. The sound of people celebrating not just a wedding, but a story they'd all been part of. The reception was held in the same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first dinner, the owner delighted to host the event after hearing how their relationship had started. Emma gave a toast that was mostly jokes about her dad's terrible cooking and Ava's initial confusion about soccer rules, but ended with words that silenced the room. When my mom left, I thought it was because I wasn't good enough, Emma said, her voice small but steady. But Dad always told me it wasn't about me, that sometimes people leave and it says more about them than about us. She looked at Ava with eyes wise beyond her 9 years. Ava didn't have to stay. She could have dated Dad and kept me at a distance, or left when things got hard with the company, but she chose to stay. She chose to learn about dinosaurs and help with homework and come to my soccer games even when we lose really badly. Emma's voice wavered but held. She chose to be my family, and that's the best gift anyone's ever given me. There wasn't a dry eye in the restaurant. Ava was openly weeping, and even Liam, who thought he'd cried himself out that morning, felt fresh tears. "So here's to Ava," Emma continued, raising her glass of sparkling cider, "for being brave enough to be my new mom, and to Dad for having the courage to knock on a door and change all of our lives." The toast was echoed around the room, glasses clinking, love and joy and hope mixing with the smell of garlic bread and wine. Later, as the party wound down and Emma dozed on Sarah's lap, Liam and Ava stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city stretched before them, the same city they'd been navigating for years, but somehow it looked different now, full of possibility rather than obstacle. "We did it," Ava said softly, leaning against him. "Did what?" "Everything. Against all odds, against all reasonable expectations, we built something real." Liam thought about that rainy night, about the chain of choices that had led them here. Thought about the company they'd transformed, the lives they'd touched, the family they'd created. "You know what the wildest part is?" he said. "What?" "If you hadn't spilled that coffee, none of this would have happened. Our entire life together, everything we've built, it started because you had clumsy hands that night." Ava laughed, the sound bright and free. "Are you saying our love story is based on my inability to handle a coffee cup while emotionally compromised? I'm saying the best things in life come from unexpected moments, from small acts that seem insignificant until you look back and realize they were everything." She turned to face him fully, her hand resting over his heart. "I used to think strength meant never needing anyone. That vulnerability was weakness, that asking for help was failure. And now? Now I think the strongest thing I ever did was let you see me crying. The bravest choice I ever made was accepting your shirt and everything it represented." She smiled, radiant in the streetlight. "You taught me that kindness isn't just nice, it's revolutionary. That treating people with compassion and respect isn't soft leadership, it's the only leadership that actually works." "You taught me that I was worth more than I'd let myself believe," Liam countered. "That the things I'd been doing instinctively, seeing people, valuing them, caring, those weren't just nice qualities. They were skills, leadership qualities that matter." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city, feeling the weight of the day settling into memory. "What do you think happens next?" Ava asked. "Next we go back inside, collect our sleeping daughter, and go home. Tomorrow we wake up as a married couple and figure out what that means. Next week, next month, next year, we keep showing up, keep choosing each other, keep building this life one day at a time." That sounds perfect. And it was. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense, where everything is easy and nothing goes wrong. Perfect in the real sense, where two imperfect people choose each other daily, where challenges are faced together, where love is both the journey and the destination. Months turned into years. The company continued to evolve, its culture of compassion becoming the model that other corporations tried to emulate. Liam's employee relations department expanded, training managers across the industry on the radical concept of treating people as human beings. Ava's leadership was studied in business schools, her transformation from Ice Queen CEO to compassionate visionary becoming a case study in authentic leadership. Emma grew up in a home filled with love and laughter, never doubting that she was wanted, valued, cherished. She went on to study paleontology in college, naturally, and her acceptance speech for a prestigious scholarship thanked her parents for teaching her that kindness and strength weren't opposites, but partners. The navy blue shirt, carefully preserved despite its coffee stain and frayed collar, hung in a frame in their home. A reminder, a symbol, a testament to the truth that sometimes the smallest acts create the biggest changes. Because on a rainy night years ago, a man had heard someone crying and made a choice. He could have walked past. He could have decided it wasn't his problem, wasn't his place, wasn't worth the risk of crossing invisible lines between power and position. But he knocked. He offered his shirt when it was needed. He saw a person in pain and responded with simple, uncomplicated compassion. And that choice, that moment of kindness that asked for nothing in return, changed everything. It changed a woman who'd forgotten how to be vulnerable. It changed a company that had forgotten people mattered more than profits. It changed the life of a little girl who learned that family isn't just biology, it's choice and commitment and showing up even when it's hard. It changed the world, one ripple at a time, proving that the quiet power of kindness doesn't need to announce itself to transform everything it touches. And years later, when people asked Liam and Ava how they'd built such an extraordinary life together, the answer was always the same. It started with a shirt, but it became everything when they chose, over and over in moments large and small, to see each other, to value each other, to believe that love and compassion were not weaknesses to be hidden, but strengths to be celebrated. That was the story, simple and profound, ordinary and revolutionary. The story of how kindness changed the world, one knocked door, one borrowed shirt, one chosen moment at a time. And it was far from over, because every day brought new opportunities to knock, to offer, to see. Every day was a chance to be the person who chose compassion when everyone else walked past. Every day was a reminder that we are all just human beings, navigating this complicated world, occasionally needing someone to offer us their shirt when ours gets stained. And when we have the courage to both offer and accept that kindness, magic happens. Not the fairy tale kind, the real kind, the kind that lasts.